Hi, Leanne Donoghue-Tamplin here. Today I'm interviewing Cindy Troast. This is the second half of my interview with Cindy. The first half is in an earlier podcast. And Cindy is talking us through how she was recently diagnosed with breast cancer and what strategies she has used to cope with the treatment processes following that. And so, as I said, this is the second half of my interview. To see the first half, it'll be on an earlier podcast. At the end of this interview, I will be coming back with a summary and a review of the issues and strategies that we've discussed so that you can apply those in your own life. Enjoy the interview, and I'll see you again soon. I guess the next question I want to ask you is about what character strengths do you think that you drew on most to get through that time? I'm going to read you a couple so you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So good judgment, creativity, courage, perseverance, teamwork, self-discipline, connection to others, spirituality, those kinds of things. There's a whole lot of other things you could say. I think one of the ones that stands out for me already based on what you've just said is your assertiveness was there. You were able to voice what you needed from others and get them to get on board with you about that. So I think that was great. That was a great strength of yours to be able to do that. Were there other things that you think you drew on?
I agree with that. I think when you're given something like a cancer diagnosis, it can be easy to fall into that victim mode, but I was determined not to do that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel that I would then be in a state of power. I wouldn't be in a powerful position to direct my experience. So I think there was perhaps a bit of courage, definitely self-determination, assertiveness, and independence. You know, I think that when we're going through an experience like this, it can be very easy to fall into kind of the expected norm. And I was not about to do that because the expected norm is cancer is awful, you're a victim, this is going to be bad, this is going to be difficult. And I was determined that that would not be the norm for me.
Was there a point at anywhere along the line where you felt, oh, this is hopeless?
Say that again, I felt what?
That it's hopeless, that you're not going to get through it? Was there ever a time when those other thoughts took over?
Oh, no, never.
Never. Yeah.
No, not that they didn't start to creep in or that, not that I wasn't Superwoman. Let's put it that way. It's not like I never had a bad thought or never was scared. I was scared a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those situations where you're scared, but you do what you need to do anyway.
Yeah.
So I was never hopeless because I wouldn't allow myself to be hopeless. And really, there was no reason to be hopeless. Breast cancer is very treatable.
Yeah.
So there was no reason for me to be hopeless.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you were, what was great is you were able to, sorry, I'm just getting a message up on my screen. You were able to just find a way to be strong enough to push through that. I think for a lot of women, sometimes it's really hard. Those thoughts become overwhelming. Is there something about you or the way you've handled things like that in the past that gave you the ability to control that thinking?
I am independent. I'll say that. Some might say I'm headstrong. But I know what I want and I go for it.
Yeah.
So, but I think also I was very aware that I continually needed to be managing my mindset. It was not like on day one I said this is going to be easy and poof, it just was easy. I had to manage that every single day and sometimes minute to minute, literally, which is why I was feeding my mind with all these positive affirmations because when I was doing that, that made it more difficult for anything negative to come in. But I definitely was managing moment to moment.
Yeah. Yes. Look, I think a lot of women, whatever their challenge is, describe that feeling of managing minute to minute, and there are times when it's much worse than other times. So times when it's a bit easier, times when it's tougher. A lot of people will say those thoughts are so powerful, I can't I can't control them. And I think what you're saying is they were still powerful for you, but, you know, there were times when it felt overwhelming and you had to work very hard at managing them. And the way you did that was just, would you say, just determination? It was just, I'm not going to let those other thoughts come in.
It was determination, but I think when you kind of set things in motion to have a positive experience, you build momentum.
Yes.
And something else I would like to mention that I did, there are many things, many different things you have to go through during breast cancer treatment in terms of medical procedures. It's not like you're told you have a lump and then the next day you get surgery. There's, you know, biopsy, there's all kinds of testing. And a lot of those procedures, I'll be honest, were very painful. But something that I also did, I didn't want to have that memory of pain anchored within me, anchored in my body. So even when I went to the biopsy and different things that were actually quite painful, as soon as they were finished, I said to myself, oh, that was easy. Done with that. That's
How
over.
did that go? Because it wasn't, was it? I mean, it wasn't actually an easy process, but you were kind of convincing yourself that it was.
And I don't know if it's so much convincing, it's deciding. You know, it's deciding I am not going to let these emotions of pain and fear and all of that anchor themselves in my body. I'm not going to wallow in that. I'm not going to live there, if you will. So as soon as each procedure was done, it was like, boom, I'm done. I'm done with that. No need to wallow in it. That was easy. I'm out of here. It's over. And so I think that, again, was kind of that managing moment to moment and deciding, how can I do this so that it is easy, so I don't get stuck in any one phase of this, feeling like, oh dear, this is just the worst thing that's ever happened. I didn't want to get stuck in that.
Yeah. And I really like how you're saying that. The other thing I've heard a few women say as well is, so even not just the stuck, a lot of them do the same thing as you're talking about. But they also give themselves a little bit of time. And I noticed you said that, you know, although you worked very quickly, got to the car and were already saying, I'm going to make this easy. But there's a little bit of time for grief or overwhelm or shock or whatever that feeling is. But then there seems to be a sense of, so now what? You know, how am I going to, what's my kind of problem solving strategy for getting through this? I think it's interesting that that's the kind of message that women who push through these things do. There's a little bit of room and then, like you said, there was pain and it was uncomfortable, you know, but then I'm not going to wallow in it. I'm not going to get stuck in it. Yeah, I think that's amazing.
And again, you know, you don't need to be Superwoman. I'm definitely not. And I think it's individual with each woman, but I think the key point is don't get stuck. If you find yourself thinking repetitively negative thoughts, and you're kind of stuck in that. So you stop that, you know, do whatever you can do to reverse that and start getting back to those positive thoughts, because I think there is grief certainly is a part of this process, and you don't want to just push that away. I don't feel like I pushed away any part of the experience. I experienced it, but I experienced it briefly. And got on to the better stuff.
Kept moving. So is there, and this is really the last question I'm going to ask you, is there anything that you would do, actually it's the second last question, is there anything that you would do differently looking back at it? Do you think you made the right choices?
You know, that's a good question, and I have thought about what could I have done differently. I feel like I handled it in the best way for me. And I feel like I got through it pretty well and was able to experience breast cancer without feeling like, gosh, this was just the worst thing. I don't think it was the worst thing. It wasn't that horrible. I just tried to manage it as best I could and deal with the difficult parts of it and get back to that positive mindset. So I think I probably would do it the same as I did.
And do you think, I mean, what's happening now in terms of you managing anything? I mean, you still have to have 6 monthly checkups, you know, there's probably still thoughts in the back of your mind every now and then about it. What's the biggest issue for you now in I guess, maintaining where you're at about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have had a few issues since I completed what I call the active phase of my treatment.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of in the maintenance phase where you're taking medication and things like that. And the medication has side effects, and that has been a challenge at some point. But what I always try to do is go back to whatever was positive. So if I'm having a day where I'm feeling particularly like the side effects are really kind of getting to me, or they're just a bit of a struggle, I go back to some of the things that I did. I listen more to my affirmations. I spend a few more minutes in meditation. And I just try to always get back to that positive thought, or at least even if I can't be extremely positive, I'm always asking myself, how can I feel just a little bit better? What would be a little bit better than this? So I try to stair step it, if you will. So I'll get a little bit better and then try to stay in that energy for a bit. And then after a bit of that, then it's like, okay, what would be even a little bit better than this? So it's kind of stair stepping my way back up if I'm having a challenge or something is not going the way I would like it to.
Yeah. There's a term I heard recently that I really like called grounded optimism. So that if someone is going through some kind of an adversity, instead of keeping the wild optimism, that doesn't fit with their new reality, they make it more, I'm still being optimistic, I'm still being positive, but it's actually reality-based positive. And I think that's what you're talking about. This is where I am right now. How do I get to this step as opposed to the other one that seems too far away at the moment?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's funny. I don't, if I'm not feeling well, or if I'm feeling a side effect or something from the medication, that is reality, but I don't want to stay there because I believe I can change it.
Yes.
So I don't go from one extreme to the other, and I don't pretend like everything is perfect, because that's too hard to believe. I mean, I think what we say to ourselves, we need to be able to believe it to make it real. Yeah. So that's why I kind of do that stair step process, so that I can believe that things are a little bit better. I can feel a little bit better, and then a little bit better from that, and a little bit better from that. So I think that that's more effective than feeling not well at all and just telling yourself, hey, I feel great, when that little voice in your head says, no, you don't. You don't feel great.
You don't. Yeah, I feel terrible. So in terms of maintenance at the moment, the processes are similar to what you were doing whilst going through it. So you're still noticing your thinking, because you're still doing some things, like as in having the medication. So you're noticing, and then you're addressing those thoughts by doing that stepped process you described. Is there anything else that, you also mentioned you'll do a little bit more meditation, so you're still doing meditation regularly. Is there anything else that you're doing now?
I'm continuing with exercise. I'm really trying to get outdoors a lot, because I'm an outdoors person anyway. I love being outside, but I think that it's easier to be positive if you're out, breathing the fresh air and feeling healthy and soaking up some sun and doing some exercise. So I think all that is beneficial as well. Yeah.
Do you think there's any benefits from this process for you? Do you think there's been anything good to come out of it for you?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I just found out really how strong I am. And I found out that even in the face of like a crisis or a very significant challenge, I can overcome that. It does not have to defeat me or put me down so low that I can't get back up. And I think that we learn those things through adversity. You know, if everything is going perfectly, you don't really know how strong you are or what you're capable of. So I think I have honed coping skills. I've learned how to cope. And I feel like I have a message that I can really help other women with too, that I didn't have before. It wasn't, you know, breast cancer wasn't something that I could, you know, relate to or didn't really have any knowledge of. So I feel like I have something now that I can really help get that message out to other women that this is not a death sentence. This does not have to be a horrible experience. You can get through this in a positive way and, like I said earlier, not be a victim of your disease.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have a lot to offer for other women going through the same experience. That's it, Cindy. Is there anything else you want to add before we finish up?
No, I thank you very much for the opportunity, Leanne. It's been great talking with you today, and I just really appreciate being here and being able to talk to women about breast cancer. It is something that affects a lot of women, so
it does.
I appreciate being able to talk about it.
And thank you for being so honest and open with everything that happened for you. I know that can be tricky. Thanks, Cindy.
Sure.
Right, so I'm just going to do a review of this second half of Cindy's interview. She identified in this half the character strengths that she drew on were her assertiveness, her courage, her self-determination, and her independence. And that was independence not just in independent living, but also in independent thinking. She didn't go with the society norm that cancer is hard and difficult and potentially going to end your life. She instead went against that norm and focused on a much more positive experience and feeling much more in control of the cancer process. She said, though, that that wasn't easy, that she had to manage her mindset on a daily basis and just keep monitoring what thoughts were in her head and coming back to the focus of her mantra, this is going to be easy. But she said that took a lot of work. But because she was doing that on a daily basis, she said there was a momentum that she gained. The constant repetition gave her momentum and increased her determination. She did say a couple of times she wasn't superwoman. It wasn't easy, but she did keep herself focused. She said after each procedure, which were often very painful and traumatic, she would let herself feel it and be in it and then quickly move herself out of it, not get stuck in it. And again, come back to that focus of that was easy. It was all about ease. She also described a process of stair-stepping, which I thought was a really great term to use to describe it. Stair-stepping her way back up into positive thinking. So if she was having a really bad day and it was difficult to go straight to this is easy or it's not painful or not difficult, she would just go one step at a time. So that step might be just a little bit better. What could be a little bit better than this? And then once she got to that place, she would move to what's a little bit better than that. And so it was a great description of just moving that positivity. She did say that you've got to be able to believe those positive statements you say to yourself. So when you're feeling really bad, to have some outrageously positive statement isn't going to sit, the negative, backflip of that is you're going to probably be hearing, no, I'm not feeling great. This is really painful in your head all the time. So instead she worked to make those positive statements a little bit more positive, not as outrageously positive, and then work her way up gradually. She also said there were some benefits in going through the experience that she's been through. She said she's learned how strong she is, that she can always get back up. No matter what crisis she encounters in any area. So this was just an example of an adversity for her, and now she knows how she can get through it. So a really positive outcome for Cindy, both from a health perspective, but also from a psychological perspective. She really grew from her experience. All right, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Cindy, and I'll talk to you again soon.